Have you ever seen strange, small, pill-shaped critters popping up out of the sand where tide breaks? Or perhaps dug down into the sand at the beach and discovered something small, smooth, and oval come scurrying out? This week on Insects for Fun, we're going to look into the small, fascinating world of mole crabs. Mole crabs are not true crabs, but rather a genus in the group of odd-tailed crustaceans known as Anomura crabs. For memory's sake and reference, our lovable hermit crabs are also within this group, and they're classified by their odd tails. The family of mole crabs is Hippidae, and there are two well-known genera. The first is Emerita, which only has 12 recognized species, and the second is Hippa, with 15 recognized species. What's interesting, though, is that Emerita mole crabs are found worldwide, while Hippa mole crabs are only known from the Indo-Pacific and Australia. There does seem to be a third genus known as Mastigochirus, but the information on it is so scarce that it makes me wonder if it got absorbed into one of the other genera. These tiny fellas range in size from 2.5 millimeters up to 37 millimeters, with females generally being larger. They have barrel-shaped bodies, tough and smooth exoskeletons, 5 pairs of legs, and a modified tail called a telson, which they use to dig holes. Their bodies are designed to absorb impacts of waves because they live in the swash zone. And yes, the term is swash and not wash. I too was surprised, but swash is the technical term for the water that moves over the beach as incoming waves. These small crabs thrive in the swash zone because it offers protection and a constant source of stirred-up plankton. The crabs use feathery antennae to find and sweep up drifting plankton that get picked up by the swash. If you look at one though, you might get the impression that their antennae aren't feathery at all. Mole crabs actually have 2 sets of antennae, and the ones that we normally see are not feathery at all and used for detecting vibrations, water movement, and even respiration. Yeah, they actually suck water in from their primary smaller antennae, which gets fed into their gills. This is important because these crabs spend most of their time buried in the sand and need a method for breathing while staying hidden. I like to compare them with Japanese ninjas, which used bamboo pipes to breathe while hidden underwater. But mole crabs aren't just burying themselves for the sake of being hidden. As mentioned earlier, these crabs live in the swash zone, and as a result, they have to be masters of tide change and digging to avoid the onslaught of swash. The crabs have to follow the tide changes to stay submerged as the tide moves in and out. They can sense a change in direction of water movement using their primary antennae, and when it's time to move, the mole crabs will move as a colony, quickly unburrowing themselves to get swept away when the tide is receding. It's not particularly hard to find these guys on the shoreline if you dig a little down. They're common enough to have been given many different common names such as sand fleas, sand fiddlers, and sand crabs. But I think mole crab is the most accurate one, especially considering that there are other sand dwellers known as sand fleas, which actually act and look like fleas, unlike mole crabs. As for sand crabs, well, lots of crabs burrow into the sand, so that's not really a helpful identifier. These tiny critters typically live for 2 or 3 years, and their peak activity happens in the warmer months, usually from spring through late summer when they emerge in massive numbers. Some sources will say the crabs only live for a year or 2, but they aren't sexually mature until 1 year, so I don't think they're counting the larval stage at all. Springtime brings mating season, but many sources online say it really can happen anytime between February and October. Males seek out females in the surf zone and attach themselves to their larger partners, sometimes for days. Once fertilized, the female carries her developing eggs under her shell until they're ready to be released. Female mole crabs, which are larger than males, carry thousands of bright orange eggs, up to 45,000 to be exact, and can lay this many each month. It's no wonder many people have no issues finding them. When the eggs hatch, tiny larvae are swept into the ocean where they drift for several weeks as plankton before settling back onto sandy shores. From there, they grow rapidly, molting multiple times until they reach adulthood. So, how does a tiny defenseless crab survive in such a turbulent world? Simple, by staying hidden. Their ability to burrow in seconds makes them nearly invisible to predators and beachgoers alike. And yes, they can bury themselves in under 2 seconds, and researchers have closely observed them to see just how. Using a process called liquefaction, these crabs stir up sand using their tail or telson, and then push the sand up using their 5 pairs of legs like a conveyor belt. They bury themselves back end first because, well, these crabs can't actually move forward or sideways. The way their legs move makes them only able to scurry backwards, which is why they have to reposition themselves with a change in tide. Their speedy little legs aren't enough to keep them safe all the time though. Mole crabs are an important food source for shore birds like sanderlings, fish like pompano and surf perch, and even humans who use them as bait. Some cultures even fry them up for crunchy seaside snacks, particularly in Southeast Asia like Thailand and Malaysia. But aside from being a tasty treat for many animals, mole crabs play a crucial role in the coastal ecosystem. They filter plankton from the water, helping to keep beach environments healthy. Their presence or absence can also indicate changes in beach health due to pollution or erosion. Scientists actually study mole crab populations to monitor coastal conditions. And that's going to do it for this week's episode on mole crabs. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you want more episodes that cover a wider variety of material and noteworthy news, then check out the bonus episodes, which are available to unlock through Patreon. Thanks again for listening, and you'll hear from me again next week.